with new ideas in order to provide us the outcomes that we need as a nation.
He assured Ghanaians of his government's unwavering commitment to resolving the energy crisis and prevent a return to the era of doomsday.
Don't despair. Like I said, you elected us to solve the problems, not to put the blame on us.
When the names were read out by Mr. Speaker, he read out only 3 names. This thoughts appointment is unacceptable. We expect them to be ready from day one. You cannot start energy, finance, attorney general. When are the red of the ministers? You must be ready. We want to hear Ama Kofi Bua. We want to hear Agric. We want to hear Agric ministry. We want to hear roads and highways. We want to hear lands and natural resources.
Honorable
we want
Minority
to hear
Leader.
Education.
So that's the Minority Leader, Alexander Fenyo, marking there. And with that position that he espoused, got the reaction of the majority side in Parliament later. Let's gauge the reactions of key players in the various sectors of these persons that have been nominated. Let's start off with the Energy Ministry, and John Abdullah Jinapor is Yape Koso, Member of Parliament and the Minister for Energy Designate. The man who has really worked closely with John Jinapor is joining us on Zoom right now. Ben Boachi is Executive Director of the Africa Center for Energy Policy. Boachi, good evening. Thank you very much for joining us here on Ghana Tonight. I'm looking at, over the period, what you have done with John Jinapor, and hearing his name penned down for the Energy Ministry.
No, I think it's not surprising. I mean, he's been at the man in charge. He has been in Parliament, a man in charge of energy. As a ranking of the Mines and Energy Committee of Parliament, and he's been speaking for the NDC for the past 8 years. So even though there were other contenders and also other experienced individuals in the space, it doesn't come as a surprise that he was the man who was chosen to actually lead the ministry.
It doesn't come as a surprise to you, but it's quite clear that his work is cut out already, is it not, with what we're faced with as we speak?
Absolutely. I mean, he has shown understanding of the sector and its challenges. We have had opportunity to discuss it on many occasions. He sees with the facts and the realities of the sector. So we can only hope that, he will be able to deliver. And I've seen comments from him actually accepting the challenge to fix the energy sector challenges. So if he is lucky to have a collaborative Minister of Finance to quickly tackle the energy sector challenges, they should be able to address it. And I'm hoping that he would hit the ground running, focusing on, how he can address the challenges, particularly those that have to do with the distribution end, that is the ECG, and also the upstream sector where investments have declined over the years. And we need to come up with a new strategy to drive investment and bring money into the country. So I'm hoping that these two will be top on his priorities to be able to fix the energy sector challenges. Because the upstream could bring revenues to also address the fiscal problems that we do have in Ghana, and also fixing ECG or downstream power sector would help take the pressure off government for the recurrent injection of money into the distribution of electricity.
So you talk about fixing ECG. We heard yesterday the President, John Mahama, indicates that the privatization of the distribution part of the chain is still not off the table, that is going to activate conversations about the restoration of that Millennium Challenge Corporation money of over 190 million that we lost in the actual administration, and all the matters relating to PDS. Now, what kind of energy sector is John Jinapor going to inherit if it's so confirmed by Parliament in the coming days?
No, we are told that there is over 2.5 billion debt outstanding, which is just the tip of the iceberg. The reality also is that on a monthly basis, more debt are created because of the under-recoveries in the sector. So we are not looking at just 2.5 billion plus. In my estimation, it's way more than that. If you look at judgment debts and other debts that I don't see in the books, it could be more than the 2.5 billion. But those are debts. But there are debts that are created on a daily basis, monthly basis, that we need to have a handle on. And keeping ECG current should be the topmost priority. If it's able to deal with the debt accumulation, then you have the freedom to now think how you address the outstanding debt. Other than that, we're going to be struggling to handle the energy sector challenges, because you're always creating more debt. The sector is creating more debt, and it could grow up to 2 billion a year. So if you add in 2 billion every year and you can't address it, government will have to sacrifice the budget to be able to intervene.
I see you talk about government sacrificing the budget, and this would then lead us to the conversation about the finance minister designate. But before I let you go, Mr. Boakye, with what we're faced with now, and the fact that the president has decided, in fact, to now engage the West African Gas Pipeline Company to possibly extend the maintenance schedule again for maybe a possible 2 weeks, so as to give some time to be able to deal with what we're faced with right now because of that postponement of the scheduled maintenance from October last year to January this year, at the instance of the former Energy Ministry under the former President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. What is the extent of the dire situation that we're faced with now from where you sit and from the data available to you?
Now, we have seen many of those in the past years. There has been many shutdowns, maintenances here and there, taking power. Nobody talks about it. I mean, even when they talk about it, the government will not admit. So the fact that there's a change of government and they want to avoid the narrative that they are here to bring doomsday, and I think that's what is creating the euphoria. But other than that, we've seen the West Africa pipeline shut down before. We've seen no fuel in the Eastern Enclave before and gone through these challenges. So we just have to be sober and think through how we practically deal with it, so that, one, we are not creating more debt, because, as I indicated, power to the ECG, you're not going to get your money back. So if government goes to buy whatever fuel is debt, how do we mitigate, these challenges without creating more debt? I mean, it's understandable that at this point government will have to intervene, but to what level? We have to be measured in the way we do it. I think that some minimal amount of shedding should be allowed, whilst they get some HFO and liquids to run some turbines to stabilize the grid, keep the grid active, because if you shut down the entire Eastern Enclave, it will create instability in the grid. But the amount of energy required to stabilize the grid, we need to put that on and get the liquid fuels to do that, whilst we fix the gas supply. Gas is the cheapest fuel for us, and therefore the less that you create when you consume gas, even with all the inefficiencies. So I'm hoping that we'll be sober in reflecting on these things and not create a lot more debt in this situation.
We'll see how things play out in the coming days. But Mr. Boakye, thank you. Ben Boakye is Executive Director of the Africa Center for Energy Policy, one of the foremost energy CSOs we have in this country, talking about expectations of John Jinapor eventually confirmed as Energy Minister. But on the matter of the situation we're faced with right now, that is the possible Dumso or the erratic power supply in the coming days if nothing is done urgently. John Mahama says there's a situation that he has inherited. He's not going to give excuses. He's going to tackle it because that's what he was elected for. Take a look.
The president marked his first public engagement outside of the seat of government since his inauguration by attending the National Convention of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Mission in Pumazi of the Central Region, themed Justice and Peace, the essential ingredients for national development. The president used the occasion to outline his administration's vision and address key national concerns.
I would soon establish a committee to begin the planning of a national constitutional review validation conference to achieve broad consensus on the way forward for the constitutional amendments that we have all proposed. I'm going to set up a planning committee to start working on the National Education Review Conference that I promised. This conference will review our educational system right from the kindergarten through the basic to secondary to tertiary to technical vocational education and identify what the hindrances to quality education are at each level of our educational system. I believe that this conference will come out with new ideas in order to provide us the outcomes that we need as a nation.
He assured Ghanaians of his government's unwavering commitment to resolving the energy crisis and prevent a return to the era of doomsday.
Don't despair. Like I said, you elected us to solve the problems, not to put the blame on anybody else or to shoulder you with those problems.
With agriculture.
So that's the position of President John Dramani Mahama on this matter of the impending situation that we're having to deal with. But let's shift our focus to the next person. That's the second of the three whose names were mentioned today as ministers designates. That's Dominic Ayeni, Dr. Dominic Ayeni for the Minister of Justice and Attorney General. That's a designate. Let's connect with private legal practitioner and a member of the Operation Recover All Loot preparatory team, Martin Pebble, joining us on Zoom right now. Counsel, good evening. Thank you very much for joining us here on Ghana Tonight. You know Dr. Dominic Ayeni quite well. You've done a number of cases with him and possibly confirm this for me if he taught you. But how does this nomination of him to the Attorney General's office to head that ministry strike you?
Okay, so it's a good nomination, to put it mildly. Yeah, there can be a richer word for it. Yes, he's quite competent for the job. Yes, quite competent for the job based on my previous interactions with him. Okay, yeah, and it wasn't surprising. I'll come back to the competencies a bit. It wasn't surprising because, you know, he was Deputy Attorney General the last time NDC was in office, especially the second term, right? Yeah, don't know if it was all the 8 years. Yeah. So having been in that office, it's not that surprising that now he's risen to the substantive minister. So from deputy to substantive. Now, I mentioned the competence, which is the core thing. We'll come to other, criteria for this appointment, but the thing being the competence, it's very important because, you know, that's the core of the matter. You know, the nation is yearning for very competent ministers who can get the job done quickly, etc. So it's okay, to put it mildly once again, that he's been given the position. And today I'm using the milder words because as Ghanaians, we are learning, right? So we don't want to start extolling the virtues of the person too much or giving too much praise, singing, etc. at the beginning. Let's wait to give that verdict at the end. Yes, so on paper and in practice, it's qualified, but the better judgment will come at the end of his tenure. Then we can look at what he did in office. That should be where the emphasis should go. Because, you know, when you mention Ayeni has been a law teacher He taught until he stopped. He had taught for at least 15 years, yes, before he finally stopped teaching. So if you ask lots of lawyers, to the extent that Ayene taught so many of us, you would hardly say he's not qualified for the job. Very few lecturers would not be qualified, you see, because you would have to learn the law and a lot of the time practice it to be able to impact onto others, right? And Ayene taught well, so we can't say he's not competent. But like I said, for grading that as to how well he'll perform in the office, we will reserve judgment, and that's very important. That will reserve judgment for him to come into office and perform. Then when he's exiting, we can then give praise where it is due. But at the beginning, at the point of entry, this is not the time for praise at all. You know, we all know too well many persons who came into office with excellent qualifications, but they didn't do quite well in office. So because of that, that's why I say we are learning. I'll wait, reserve judgment to the end.
And in fact, that's position that a number of persons would also align to, we will see. And indeed, as the coming days would be, and then also the entire process of his vetting and the matters that will come up as well. Thank you very much, Lawyer Martin Pebble, for your thoughts on this. I think your point is well made clearly. And we'll have a conversation in the coming days. Thank you. Martin Pebble is a private legal practitioner. He's one of the foremost constitutional lawyers we have in this country. He's a member of the Operation Recover All Loot preparatory team. Thank you for joining us. But on the matter of finance, Dr. Keselato Forson, a former deputy finance minister, if you look at all three persons who are named today, they've all deputized in these ministries before. So they're coming in with that rich experience of knowing how things work out. But they are coming at a time as well in the different scheme of things when you look at the larger picture of the various sectors that they are going into. And the economy is the major one. And the finance minister has the sole responsibility to carry out and execute and eventually achieve that objective of President John Mahama to reset this economy. And Dr. Keselato Forson is the one who has been nominated to do this. And I sat with him some time ago to get his understanding of what we're faced with and the kind of economy that he would want to inherit, and his understanding of the challenge when it comes to the economic situation that we were faced with and what he has inherited. Take a look.
What are the implications of a situation like this?
It's terrible. I mean, we don't wish that. We don't wish that for our country. We want Ghana to do well. We want to inherit a good economy. We want to come to government and be able to do what we have promised the people of Ghana. But unfortunately, this is a government that has run the Ghanaian economy aground to a point of no return. It will take us years. They themselves have announced that it will take us up to 10 years for Ghana to recover. And clearly, so they have raised all the gains. International image of the people of the Republic of Ghana is gone. The reputation that has been built over the years is completely gone. Completely gone. This is a country that everybody loves. This is a country that was once seen as the hope for Africa. Today, we've now become a laughingstock, and people are referencing Ghana as a country that has defaulted, and unfortunately, a case study that Africa has never seen before. Okay, and when you are confronted with a situation like that, where you are not in a position to repay your debt, you have to put the brakes. Let me tell you another thing that probably you are not aware. The entire tax revenue we raise in this economy is not enough to service our debt and to pay for wages and salaries. It's not enough. In fact, you require over 50% of your revenue only to service your interest. Interest only, over 50%. So I think the numbers are almost about 62%. And then if you are to add amortizations, debt repayment itself, you are hitting close to 80%. That the remaining 20% is not enough to pay the wages and salaries of government workers.
Would you recommend a ceiling or capping for borrowing by government at this time?
Okay, so, and that is why some of us want the IMF program to start early, because the IMF program itself will impose some ceilings.
Ceiling on borrowing?
Yes, certainly, particularly on non-concessional borrowings. The IMF program in itself would do that. But let me make this point also. I think Ghana has missed a golden opportunity to correct the mess